Welcome to Advice for Grad Students. I'm your host, Phil Haun, and I'm joined with my friend and colleague, Caitlin Talmadge, a fellow alum of SSP. Caitlin, thanks for being with us today.
Of course, it's great to be here.
Yes, and a disclaimer, the views are our own and not of our institutions. And Caitlin has a lot of experience on this topic of dissertation into a book. So Caitlin, I'm going to let you take it from here. Have at it.
Sure thing. Well, this obviously is an important part of going from being a grad student to, hopefully being a productive scholar in the field and in an academic job, or, even in a policy job where you're doing this on the side. There's a lot of people who want to turn that dissertation into a book. And so it's really, can be a cool culmination of all the work that you've done. An important foundation for turning your dissertation into a book is to approach your dissertation defense with that goal in mind. And if you get a chance, check out the other episode that we've recorded on that topic, because one of the points that we made in that discussion is that you really should be using your defense to think ahead to the publication process for the dissertation and think ahead to the revisions that you would need to make to turn your dissertation into a book. So knowing what the work is that needs to be done is kind of the first step. And sometimes that list is shorter, sometimes that list is longer, sometimes that list involves rewriting, sometimes it involves cutting the manuscript, sometimes it involves entirely new research. It's different for different people, but you kind of have to know what the list of things is that has to be done first. With that being said, for many people, I really encourage taking a break from your dissertation after you graduate. I remember I couldn't bear to open that dissertation, any time in the months after I defended, not because I didn't like it or didn't like my topic or anything, but I was just tired. I've been working on it for a long time, and I felt kind of like I didn't have a ton of new ideas. It was just hard to think about it in a fresh way. And I think a lot of people have that experience. Plus, frequently, people are going from their dissertation into an academic job. And so they're, or some other type of job, but they're in a new job is the point, and they have a lot of new responsibilities. And so it's hard to simultaneously rev yourself up to think fresh, big thoughts about this project you've already been working on for so many years, while simultaneously gearing up to do well in a new position with new tasks and new duties and new colleagues and all of that. So I often tell people, work on something else for 6 months, or work on an article spinoff from your dissertation for 6 months, which is what I did. But just give yourself some breathing room if you feel like you need it. That's totally fine. And can often be very good. With that being said, I think you don't want to wait forever and ever, because especially for those who are in tenure track positions, you do want to have your book, hopefully out or under contract, by the time of your mid-tenure review. So if you think about the tenure clock as typically being about 6 years, by about year 3, you're going to have some type of review where, your senior colleagues are going to look at your file and say, okay, has this person been publishing? Are they starting to do the things that we anticipated they would do when we hired them? Are they on track to get tenure? And for most scholars, one of the most important benchmarks that they're going to look at is, what is the status of this person's book? And so, if your book is out or it's under contract by that 3rd year or 4th year, that's a really good sign, because that means that by the time you're actually up for tenure, that book is going to have been reviewed. That book is going to have been cited, hopefully. Maybe other people are talking about that book. So, you don't want to be thinking about your book getting published the year you go up for tenure. You want to think about your book being published sooner and having an impact by the time you go up for tenure. And so if you start planning backwards, that kind of means that by your, 1st year, 2nd year of being out from the dissertation, you would be revising that dissertation and hopefully getting it under review to be published. And we can talk a little bit about that process, if that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Sure thing. So One of the things that I really recommend in that stage between finishing your dissertation and submitting it for review at a publisher is to think about having a book workshop. Hopefully, you're at an institution that offers some support for those workshops. And by book workshop, I just mean a small gathering where you bring in some senior scholars, maybe even some junior scholars, to read your manuscript and give you feedback. So these are people who weren't on your committee. These are fresh eyes that are looking at the new and improved version of your manuscript. And I think you will often find senior scholars to be surprisingly generous in wanting to participate in these and help junior scholars make their work better. It's one of the nice, I think, aspects of generosity in our field that I see a lot of senior scholars really wanting to help with this. And they don't cost that much money usually to do. And they can be really beneficial. And I would urge people to have that workshop before you submit the book for publication. Like don't submit it for publication, do the workshop at the same time. Get your ducks in a row, do your workshop, maybe give some talks on your work as well, give some presentations. And then you want to, as you're starting to see kind of what the final form of your book draft is going to be, you want to start thinking about talking to editors. And Phil and I, you mentioned that this is one of the things, Phil, that you like to do at conferences is to talk to book editors and pitch your work. And I think that's a really good suggestion. You can link up with them at conferences, but you can also ask senior scholars to introduce you to book editors. Often advisors are willing to do this, or if you've met other senior scholars at workshops or conferences or whatnot, they can introduce you to an editor. And when you link up with the editor, what you want to have ready is a book proposal, or sometimes it's called a book précis. And the formats, oh, sorry, were you going to say something, Phil? You look like you're about to jump in.
Oh. You're spot on.
Okay, we're just in violent agreement. Yes, so, the format of these can vary a lot. I've seen them be 5 pages, 10 pages. Different presses have sometimes different requirements for what they want. I don't think that there's any one right formula for writing a book proposal. When I was doing mine, I found it really helpful to just ask some people whose books I liked, hey, can you show me what your proposal looked like? Everybody said yes and showed me their proposals. I've been on the other side of that now for years, and people ask me for my proposal. I say, sure, here's my proposal. And you read some different ones and you start to think, okay, this is the style of book I have, this is the type of publisher, and you'll figure out the right way to do it. It's very important that your proposal be the very best presentation of your book that you can possibly muster. So, this is something where, again, writing 5 pages about your book is actually sometimes a lot harder than writing, 50 pages. You got to be very concise. You want to have your friends or your trusted mentors edit your proposal. It can be hard sometimes to think about how to pitch in a broad way work that you've been so in the weeds on for so many years. But often that proposal is the only thing that an editor is going to read of your work before making a decision. I mean, I remember, sending my proposal to one press that I was really interested in, and they just read it, got back to me in a day, and were like, nope, we don't want, we're not interested in this. I'm like, okay. But it's not like they read the proposal and don't like it and then ask for the manuscript. Like if they don't like the proposal, they're not going to keep reading. They're just going to reject you. And so, what they're screening for, what they're trying to understand is this book that I'm reading a proposal about, is this something I actually want to then even see a manuscript for and consider for review? Because book reviewing is a very intensive activity, and presses only can ask, scholars, maybe once a year to review a book for them, or once every 2 years. And so the vast majority of books that are pitched to academic presses never get reviewed at all. They just get desk rejected, basically. And so you're trying to get past that initial hurdle of convincing them, hey, like I actually have a good manuscript here. You should want to look at the manuscript. You should want to move from the proposal to the manuscript. And then, of course, after they read the manuscript, they still might decide, like, we don't want to review this. But if they, if they did decide to review it, you would be over a really big hurdle. I don't want to say that like the majority of books that are reviewed actually get published, but I think that might actually be true. And the reason, paradoxically, is that the vast majority of books are not reviewed. So, like, if a
Yeah.
book gets to review, it has a much higher odds of actually getting published because the screening is so intense at that proposal stage.
Yeah. And at
Um,
that point, the editor is on your side, whereas before they're screening, now they effectively want this to go forward.
that's right. That's right. And so, while on the one hand, I think, Phil, you're right that like you do want to connect with editors. I think it's great to have relationships with editors, and of course, your relationships, I'm sure, have grown over time because you've published.
Sure.
Um, I think you also don't want to be approaching editors with half-baked ideas or rough drafts. You want to come with your A game, like this is my book, this is my proposal, and so forth. Were you going to
Okay,
jump in?
so well, I was one of the things which is how you can screw up as an author by breaking kind of the rules of the road, like multiple submissions and all. So I know that you have a position on the other side as well. So what's your kind of advice in that sense?
I think the biggest advice, even more so than don't break the rules, which obviously do not break the rules, is to be really clear on what the rules actually are at each press, because it's different. And for those who may be wondering, well, what rules are you talking about, Caitlin and Phil? We're talking about things like simultaneous submission. So some presses are okay with you submitting your book to them as well as to another press at the same time. Some presses are fine with that. Other presses say, no, we want exclusive review. If your book's under review with us, don't have it under review with anyone else. Or, temporary exclusive review. Like, we want to review your book exclusively for the first 3 months. And if you haven't heard back to us, then you can go to someone else. But absolutely, you want to be very clear in your understanding with the acquisitions editor, which is the person who's actually at the press, working for Stanford Press or Georgetown Press or, Cornell Press or whatever, what their rules are for the review process. And it really is different, at different presses. At some presses, they have in-house editors who edit series. And so your book would be reviewed by both someone outside the press, like an external scholar, as well as an internal scholar. At some, it's all external. It's just different. And kind of on that theme, and this relates to my advice about the book proposals as well. I think that book publishing is one of the things in our business where you benefit a lot, like more than in other areas, just from talking to people. Like, just go talk to people who have recently published books. I think you can even cold call people. I mean, I have been impressed in this field by, when I was coming up, kind of the number of people who would just sit down and give me 15 minutes about, like, what was your experience at this press? How was the editor? What was the process? How long did it take? What was in your contract? And anytime I get an inquiry about that kind of stuff now, I always give people the information that I have. And it's just one of those things that's kind of idiosyncratic, and it changes over time, and it's not written down anywhere. So you kind of need to just talk to people.
I
And that can
agree
be a
with
good
you.
thing to do, like at conferences, and it gets back to some networking stuff that we've talked about in other episodes of the podcast. But you want to be doing that and gathering that information in that period where you're revising the dissertation. That's how you're kind of getting ready to think about the presses and the editors, and that could be moving along at the same time that you're revising.
Okay, well, great. We're out of time, but I would say those of you out there, you will get through it. We all got through it. So it is a big effort,
Absolutely.
and it's phenomenal when you have that book in your hand. The best thing for me was when I saw my book on the shelf.
Yes.
So anyway, Caitlin, thank you so much for all the advice to grad students. Thank you for sharing, and to all of you out there, have a great day.